Welcome to episode 31 of the Becoming Mind Strong podcast. And we're kicking off this season with one of the single most powerful tools that I know for just freeing up insane amounts of energy in both your body and your mind. And the best part about this tool is that it is incredibly simple. Now, simple does not always mean easy. There's a difference between simple and easy. But when we take this tool and we shine the light of awareness and we do the work and we put it to use, you are going to be amazed by how transformative this is when it comes to your energy. Check it out. Welcome to Becoming Mind Strong, the official podcast of Mind Strong Fitness. My name is Rachel. I'm the owner and head coach of Mind Strong Fitness, and I am here to teach you truth. No more bullshit, no more point systems, no more shakes, no more wraps. This is math and science, and we're going to learn how to do it together. Ready? Let's rock and roll. So I'm going to challenge you to play a little game for the next week if you're listening to these podcasts live, where we're releasing once a week, or maybe the next day if you're binge listening to these podcasts because they're all already released. Here's how the game works. Super simple. We are going to put a little red flag on the word should, S-H-O-U-L-D, or shouldn't. That's it. Those are the only rules to this game. Anytime you think the word I should do this or I shouldn't do this, you're just going to put a little red flag. There's no judgment. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to rewrite at this point. We are just noticing when that thought appears in our heads. Okay? That's the whole game. For the next day, the next week, red flag those two words. Simple. Here's what you're going to find. You are going to be amazed by how often, how much of your time, how much of your energy is spent, what I call shoulding on yourself, S-H-O-U-L-D-I-N-G. The amount of time and energy that we spend shoulding on ourselves is mind-blowing when you start to notice it. I'll give you an example. You wake up in the morning. The first thought we have is, oh, I should have set my alarm earlier because now I'm going to run late and I'm not going to have time to meal prep my lunch. I'm going to have to go out. I'm going to have to buy something at lunch. It's going to be a disaster. We get dressed. Oh, I really should have gone to the gym yesterday because my pants feel tight and I feel terrible about this. I really should start going to the gym consistently. We get to work. It's time to eat. Oh, I wish I had set my alarm earlier like I said I was going to because now I didn't bring anything and now I really do have to go grab food and this is terrible. This is why I'm overweight. We spend the entire day, the majority of us, sitting there telling ourselves what we should and shouldn't be doing. And what we're not conscious of is what an energy suck this is. And here's why. In psychology, there's something called reactance. And very simply stated, I'm going to water this down to make it as simple as possible. Reactance means we don't like being told what to do. As human beings, we want the power of choice. We don't like being told, you have to do this, you can't do this. And that's exactly what we're doing when we should on ourselves. When we sit there and go throughout our day saying, you should do this, you should have done this, you shouldn't be doing this, we are spending an entire day fighting against our human nature and just beating ourselves up. So then what happens? Then we sit there and we say, why do I have no energy all the time, right? And there's even those days where we're like, I didn't even do anything today and I have no energy. If we could scientifically study the mental drain that this rumination, because that's what it is, we are ruminating on our shoulds and shouldn'ts. If we could study the mental and energetic drain that rumination takes, we would be dumbfounded. When we start to rewire our brain, when we start to take the steps to change how we talk to ourselves, the energetic release that we feel is incomparable. Now, here's the bad news. If you've hung out with us before, if you've listened to this podcast before, you understand how habits are formed, right? Inside our brain, every time we learn something new, we think a new thought, we take a new action, neural connections are formed. Every time we repeat that thought, repeat that action, there's this stuff called myelin that's coding that new neural pathway. As this is repeated over and over and over again, we're forming, it's like pouring cement on a road. We are forming a clear coded path for that neural connection. The bad news is, for most of us, we have now spent 20, 30, 40, 50 years shoulding on ourselves without conscious thought. So knowing those two things, knowing how neural connections are formed, knowing now that that is such an energy suck, the bad news is that it's a habit. Shoulding on ourselves for most of us is a habit. We don't even notice we're doing it because we're running on autopilot. It is literally cemented into our brain. That's the bad news. The good news is this. As we've talked about in here, when it comes to habits, when it comes to neural connections, we can literally rewire our brains. And in episode 32, in the next episode, we're going to dive deeper into exactly how we do that on the topic of shoulding. But for now, for the topic of this conversation, I want you to understand the fact that step one is just red flagging it, right? That we can't make any kind of change. We can't rewire our brains until we shine the light of awareness. There's no judgment around it. There's nothing to change it. It's, oh, wow, there's a should thought. Oh, wow, there's a shouldn't thought. Oh, wow, there's another should. What, isn't that the same should thought I had this morning? And you're going to be amazed at how often these are coming up. There's no beating ourselves up. There's certainly no, I shouldn't be shoulding on myself, right? You see where the catch-22 is? Because we're going to fall into this pattern, it's habit of I shouldn't be doing this. There's none of that. This is just data. We come at it from a place of curiosity. I had no idea I was doing this so much. That's super interesting. That's like my 30th should in the past 20 minutes. We are red flagging it. We're just noticing what's happening. Our next step is we're going to start to do the work of how we get out of this mindset of should, shouldn't, and how we give ourselves a new solution to this. There's a very clear insert here solution that we can plug in, and we can start to rewire our brains to get out of this habit of I should and I shouldn't. And that's what we're going to dig into in episode 32. So this kickoff podcast episode is super short because there's not much for you to do yet. Your real work with this is coming up in episode 32. For right now, we're just observing. We're merely collecting data. The first thing I want you to understand is that you are not alone in this. We all do this. This is in our human nature to sit there and to ruminate and to think, I should do this, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't be doing this, I should definitely be doing this. But the problem is, that's the reason that we feel like shit most of the time, right? When we are sitting here and we are beating ourselves up and we are fighting against human nature, we now understand human psychology, that reactance is a real thing. And we're sitting there and we're spending our entire day fighting back against that. And then we get to the end of the day and we crash on our couch and we say, why do I feel like shit today? That's why. You just spent an entire day beating yourself up and mentally feeling like shit. And when we mentally feel like shit, we physically feel like shit. You are not alone in that. It is okay that it's happening. And it is time to make a change. So your homework for the next day, the next week, if you choose to accept it, little red flag, no judgment, certainly no beating ourselves up. We just notice the shoulds and shouldn'ts. And in the next episode, episode 32, we're going to talk about exactly what to do to start to rewire our brains. Besides the mental work, your nutrition is the key to having more energy. If you haven't grabbed my free guide, Lose Weight While Still Eating Donuts, How to Never Diet Again, go to my website and grab it, www.mindstrongfitness.com.